Hello and welcome to the School Mentor Podcast. Now, this is a show where we talk about all things coaching and mentoring within the school setting. My name is Miff Martinek and I am your host. Now, this is episode 13. It's our last episode before the end of term. Ring all the bells, we're nearly there. And it feels good to have got through this spring term and be heading into Easter with some readiness for a break, some readiness to just sit back from work, from school life and take a break. So I'm excited that this is the time for you to do that, and I'm excited that I get to take a little bit of a break as well. I wanted to focus this last episode on one thing, and that one thing is practice. Now, the reason I wanted to bring your attention to practice, and I'm going to elaborate a little bit more on that in this episode, is that a lot of what I talk about sounds really common sense and it sounds really easy. It's very sensible that when we build the skills that allow us to really understand someone's challenging situation, that they will feel more connected and they will feel more able to take action. It sounds sensible, that makes sense. And it sounds sensible and easy that if we know someone is struggling and we worry that they might even be suicidal, they might be having a very awful time in their life, that the most powerful thing that we can do for them is to be there and to listen. So why doesn't it happen more? And I think the missing piece in all of this is practice. Now, I want to share with you a couple of experiences that I've had. Now, one goes over the years that I've worked in this space and the number of times that I've brought sort of yoga or another sort of well-being thing into the school setting. And I've seen it have a tiny impact for a small group of people, but often the lasting impact just isn't there. And I look at that versus the mentoring programs, and I wonder what the difference is as to why the mentoring programs have such a more lasting impact on both the mentors and the mentees in terms of their well-being. Why is that so much more successful at creating positive change in their lives? And these events that I've run had a very limited impact, huge amount of effort to set those events up, huge amount of effort. And they just seemed, the impact dwindles so quickly. And I see the same thing happen when I go in and deliver talks as well. And I saw the same thing happen when I was coaching a client yesterday. And what we were talking about with this client is they were describing an environment where they knew that when they started to feel overwhelmed by requests coming in of them, that they would respond to it by just saying yes to everything. And even though saying yes and taking on more and more activities and making more promises made them feel even more overwhelmed, it was the habitual thing that they always did because it gave them a bit of comfort, because they weren't upsetting anyone. And it didn't really matter for that client how many times they'd step back and said, no, I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no to this opportunity that's coming in so that I have got more capacity. What always ended up happening for them was that they would say no, they would feel awful about it, and then they would say yes to even more things to compensate for how bad they felt about that one no that they're given. And it really, really highlighted for me how much when the heat gets turned up, we always go back to what feels comfortable. And that's why when I do run training with, particularly with members of staff, and when I'm teaching them these skills of communication with connection first at the core of them, when I give them a scenario where a pupil feels bullied, for example, they will automatically revert back to what feels comfortable. And what feels comfortable is telling people what to do, giving advice. What feels comfortable is giving anecdotes about what you've experienced. Again, it's a form of advice. And the last one is trying to make someone feel better. Oh, don't take it too seriously. Oh, it's not your fault. You're a great person. All of these things. Now, that is what feels comfortable. So that is what we always move back to when the pressure gets turned up. But how do we start to train ourselves to do something different? How do we start to train ourselves to approach mental well-being in a different way, to role model it in a different way? And we do that through practice, not through exciting well-being events where we inspire people and we get them excited. They're great, but we can't expect that to make any kind of shift in people's mental well-being. Because what is needed to improve mental well-being is the opportunity to practice. So when I look at my methodology of connection first, that when we sit down with somebody, the most valuable thing we can do isn't give them advice, isn't make them feel better. The most valuable thing we can do is to connect with them and make sure that they feel heard, which means that we listen first and we try to understand first and we have curiosity first before any fixing happens, before we think about what we might want to say that sounds clever. We connect first. We really strive to understand. So the way that we get in the habit of doing that is we practice it. And that is what the difference is between the wellbeing events that I ran that had very little impact to the pupils that I was supporting versus the mentoring program, where those pupils had contact on a at least weekly basis with a peer that they were building trust with, and they got in the habit of having conversations where connection happened first and where connection was prioritized. So when you are looking at your wellbeing strategy and how you want to make an impact on the pupils in your school, on your colleagues, on the teachers there, on the whole community, the most valuable thing you can do is identify how to deliver a practice environment so that people can use these skills on a regular basis, because then they will become skills that they just have and they can take forward in their lives, rather than it being something that's on the back shelf and needs to be dusted off. And I did that sort of well-being conversation training once upon a time, but actually I haven't looked at it again. And it's one of the reasons that I work within mentoring programs. That's one of the reasons, that's why I deliver the training the way that I do. And I'm very strict with my schools that you have to have a program set up that they can start practicing these skills straight away. So the takeaway from today is to take a pause and look at everything that you're doing. You've got a couple of weeks now where you can sit back and review how the term has gone. And if you are looking at the results that you've achieved when it comes to wellbeing and you're not quite satisfied with them, or you think there's so much room for this to actually be a big shift in what we're doing, then for there to be much more impact from what you're getting, where is the practice going to happen? And it doesn't need to be a big event. It doesn't need to be a huge reshuffle of a timetable. It needs to be short, impactful conversations, impactful moments throughout the weeks, throughout the term. That is how you will make a big change in the well-being of all of your school's community. Have an amazing break. Take time to switch off, take time to be with your family, with your loved ones, and take your brain out of work mode. But when you are at that point of being able to reflect, I'd love for you to just consider that lens of creating an environment for practice for well-being. Thank you so much for listening. I will see you back here after the Easter break. Take care.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the School Mentor Podcast. We hope you're leaving today's episode feeling inspired to create a stronger, more connected school community. To access more resources, be sure to visit our website at this-is-me.uk. It would mean the world to us if you subscribed, rated and reviewed our podcast, and shared it with your fellow educators. Until next time, thank you for inspiring, mentoring, and changing the lives of the young people in your community.